Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us on The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Today's topic is around Russian CrossFit athlete Roman Khrennikov. He just received a visa to enter the U.S., something that he's been working on since 2018. Here to discuss the topic is our sports analysts, Brian Friend, Patrick Clark, and Tommy Marquez. Let's first discuss, we have on our article on Morning Chalk Up that he's a 4-time CrossFit Games qualifier, but there is a bit of a discrepancy when you then look at the Games website, maybe other leaderboards. So let's kind of just clear the air on why there's some confusion surrounding that.
So yeah, if you just search Roman Khrennikov and see his competition history on the his CrossFit Games profile, it's only going to list one Games appearance, which is the 2020 season, which was an online format, which is why he was able to participate in stage 1, and you'll see his finish there. But if you search on the CrossFit Games leaderboards year by year, you'll actually find him 3 times. So in addition to 2020, he also shows up on the leaderboards for 2018 and 2021 with a WD or maybe a DNS for either just did not start or withdraw next to his name. And so you might, if you went through that route, you might think, well, he's competed once but qualified 3 times, but that's not actually the case. He has qualified, but you can't find any evidence of it on either of those resources that I just listed 4 times. And Tommy, I think, can explain better than any of us why this is a little bit complicated, not just with regards to Roman, but when you're trying to identify, Games appearances or qualifications for several athletes historically.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's some good insight from Brian. Really what it comes down to is how they pull in data and organize data for athlete profiles across the years and leaderboards as well. As Brian said, he might show up on a couple of leaderboards here or there, but there's no input value for his performances during those years. And sometimes, and this is without getting too far into the weeds with how they pull data for each athlete. A lot of times, if the athlete doesn't show any results or any actual input value on the leaderboard, it won't trigger that for their particular athlete profile. And sometimes if they're doing it manually too and updating stuff as they have over the years, that's just kind of one of the gaps where, like, all right, he was on the leaderboard, but he didn't compete. He didn't actually throw down. So we're not going to count that as an appearance, because I think sometimes also the athlete profile is more geared towards Games appearances rather than qualifications as well. Yeah. So a great example of that is Lazar Jukic, who qualified, a couple of years prior, but then declined his invite. And now we get into the semantics of qualified versus made an appearance. And it gets a little sticky there. You also, even if we go further back as well, into the pre-2012 era, during that time that as the sport was developing, there were 3 different iterations in 3 years of the Games website. 4, if you even count the 2009 Games too. And each one of those had its own developer, its own server, its own setup that made cross-pollination of data very difficult, particularly with the rapidly expanding nature of the team at the time. So there are some gaps in the athlete profiles as you go back. Now, the Games website has since added those leaderboards, and it's a constantly evolving process. So hopefully that's something that gets cleared up going forward. But also at the same time, you remember CrossFit IDs didn't even exist in 2010 or 2009. So then that's a whole nother layer of, like, all right, how are we organizing all of this data? How are we getting it together? And hopefully in the future, the athlete profiles can be more comprehensive, so it'll line up with the legwork that people like Brian and Patrick and myself have done over the years.
And when we saw this on Roman's Instagram, we saw his manager Snorri posted, all of us, we had the exploding head emojis. We were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. But for people who maybe don't understand a lot of the background and really who Roman is, why is this such a big deal?
Well, I mean, it's kind of 2 fronts that you could approach that from in terms of just competition performance. For me, in recent history, he's actually on a 5-game winning streak, so to speak. I mean, he's won the last 5 competition he showed up to in the last 6 or 7 months, dating back to the Last Chance qualifier. But the best performance that I've ever seen from Roman was the 2019 Dubai CrossFit Championships, where he took on Fikowski, Vellner, BKG, Jonikoski, Lazar Jukic, and a host of other guys that are perennial games athletes, and finished third behind Vellner and Fikowski. And those three guys were 100 points or 93 points clear of fourth place BKG. And that kind of performance I think there were 10 workouts that year at Dubai against that caliber of athlete is something that just simply can't be ignored. And at that point, everyone was like, man, we need to see this guy at the games because he's competing with the best of the best.
Yeah, I think all three of us, we've all been lucky enough to see him compete in person. And me and Tommy got to see him just recently at Dubai. That's actually the first time I've seen him. So all I've known from him before was what I saw online or, on a broadcast. So seeing him actually compete this year, it was a fairly decent field. You had Lazar, you had Ricky Gerard, you had other games athletes there. He completely dominated that field. And not only that, but he's known as an athlete who, if you throw a machine out there, he's going to crush it in a machine. If it's something that's cardio, endurance, or capacity, he's going to do really well. But I was really impressed. He looks stronger than what I've seen. And I don't know if I'm pretty sure that's something he's been doing, is working on his strength. And he just looked really impressive. So having him in that field now, I think we're actually going to have like a true test of who the fittest in the world actually is.
And I think one of the things that makes him such an exciting prospect for fans too is just his ability to win events. Not even from an outside perspective, but internally with athletes too. You talk to athletes at events, and they will tell you, "Oh, that's a Roman event," as if they've already written it off. That like, okay, Roman's got this event, and I'm competing for second. You go back to the Filthy 150, where Roman finished second behind Justin Medeiros. But he went on an absolute tear on the back half of that competition, winning event after event. And you talk to athletes too, they're just like, okay, I'm not even going to go get him on this one. He's not even worth the chase. But where that really bears fruit too is at the games against the best in the sport. He's going to take a few 100-point events home. And for athletes that are maybe trying to wiggle their way up the leaderboard, particular events like these long outdoor events, like maybe someone like Patrick Vellner does well at, that are odd object and don't necessarily have to come down to technique or skill, like Roman can do really well and maybe slip in between an athlete that he's chasing like Medeiros. Or for Medeiros, who's typically pretty good in endurance events, he can fall in between and maybe bump Vellner down a few places. And that has a tremendous ability, not just for Roman to do well, but to shift and skew the point spreads for athletes as well, because now you have a legitimate person that can slot up into those top upper echelon type finishes once we cut the field down to 20 and when the things start to tighten up a little bit between the best athletes in the sport.
I think Roman's already petitioning CrossFit Games to bring back the 2K 2 half marathon row combo.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, but in all seriousness, the ability to win events, we saw last year with Guimayeros. Like you win 3 events at the CrossFit Games, it's going to be a good weekend for you because the points are there. And Roman's one of the few athletes in the field that I think has a chance to win as many as 3 events at the games.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually pretty interested to see how he does, not only in the games, but I love just to see him in Miami at Wadapalooza, see him at an event like Rogue, where I think somewhere at like Rogue's programming, he'd do really well at something like that. So I'm really excited. Him coming to the U.S., competing at some of these other events, it's also going to boost his profile. I'm sure Snorri's loving that, because, you boost that profile, that means more money coming into the sport.
Well, I mentioned that he's on this 5-game winning streak, and people might not know what I'm talking about. Obviously, probably know that he won Dubai, but he also won the Russian Federation Championship and the Madrid CrossFit Championship, and he went to Butcher's Lab with Alexander Allen and won there, or Ilin, excuse me. And this is the thing. Roman loves to compete. He's an athlete that seeks out competition and is regularly doing European Championships, Russian Throwdowns, all these events. Now, to Patrick's point, if he's got a visa to be able to travel to the U.S., not just for the games, but at his leisure, it opens up a lot of other competition doors for him, and therefore the opportunity for people to see what he can do.
We all agree that he. Sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
And I was just saying, we can't ignore too the work that he's put into trying to help himself evolve as an athlete over time, and a lot of times that comes down to making small sacrifices in certain areas to improve strength in others, and I think a great example of that was in Dubai, where we saw Roman let off the gas a little bit on some of the endurance workouts, even though he was still attacking. But it was clear that, hey, I put on 15 to 20 pounds in the last couple of years, and I'm trying to get better at the strength events. And he's posting PRs in his front squats and his cleans and snatches and overhead movements, types of like 1-rep style movements that we actually see tested at the games. And I mean, I consider myself a rig shaker, and I stood next to him in Dubai, and that boy is a certified Russian meat castle, that's for sure. And I mean, I was like, what's up? And he just like, in broken English, I think he said like 10 kilos or 15 kilos or something, like basically the weight that he's put on in the time since he's broke onto the scene, as he's tried to get stronger and tried to reinforce himself for some of the heavier loads, and not just the 1-rep max stuff, but like the 80+% stuff that you have to do for reps at the games as well. And that just speaks to his ability to slowly evolve his game while still maintaining relative competitiveness, because he did finish second in those 2 events in the snow mountain as well, and still smashed Dubai overall.
And now you guys have both kind of alluded to this secondhandedly, as like Roman's back in the field this year, and Ricky's also back. And although Roman conceded those events to Ricky in Dubai, there's a reason for that. Ricky's another guy that has the potential to win multiple events at the games. And when Tommy talks about how the leaderboard could change, if you suddenly take 5 of the games events and give 2 wins to Ricky and 3 to Roman, which obviously like they have to earn that, but it could happen. That's a big distribution of points in a different way than we're used to seeing.
It looks like we all agree that he is certainly a contender and somebody who we expect to see at the CrossFit Games this year. So now I'm curious, if he's there, how well do you think he's going to do? I want some predictions.
Oh, Brian, I think Brian, go ahead and
he's smirking up there.
Well, I've been working on some preseason predictions already with regards to this, and I had Roman slotted as the 5th seed coming into the season. And in general, I'm just a little bit of a legacy guy. So I know that he has beaten BKG, like I said, in one event before. But I still think until he shows up live and does it at the games, I have to give the nod to Medeiros, Vellner, Frykowski, and BKG in some order as guys that I can't really seed him ahead of yet. So I would say is my 5th seeded guy going into this season.
I can definitely see that. And I think a top 5 spot at the games, and really what's your first live appearance, would be phenomenal. I mean, he showcased some of that ability even going virtual in 2020 when he finally got to compete. But he's also a guy that I think despite the lack of maybe outwardly facing emotion, he is able to internalize some of the vibe of the competition floor and use that for fuel, because we've seen him catch fire on multiple occasions, and really that momentum kind of build as the competition wears along. And that, coupled with the perception of him by other athletes, he's got this almost kind of like aura and mystique around him. Like, oh man, Roman, like the mad Russian, like he's got this like thing about him that's really hard to describe, but it also, I think it gives him an edge in some regards if athletes are basically writing off certain elements of programming as him having it in his back pocket already. And I'm just excited to see some of these games level events that I think the games programs better than anyone else, even with other events trying to replicate those. I just want to see him bite down into it, because the games above anything else is our top tier example of elite performance in fitness. And I want to see what peak performance in all those various elements look like. And I think it's been missing a piece of that the last few years with Roman gone, given how often he wins.
Fans are really going to, I think, really like him, because like you say, he builds off that emotion, and he's very playful. And you look at him, and like you said, the mad Russian persona, this aura that he has around him, but he's very, like, he'll sit there and take selfies. He doesn't have the best English, but he'll still, he still have fun. And I think fans are going to like it, especially if it's a really tight race. That guy's going to sell his soul to win. If it's an event that he knows he can win and not hurt himself in the process. So I think fans are really going to be in store for something really big out of him. And I think the community and the sport itself, having Roman compete, it's a very good thing.
Are either of you willing to rank him higher than 5th?
No.
Let's.
I think 5th is. I think fifth is appropriate.
Patrick?
PC?
I had him at fourth when Brian played a little game with me.
Oh, okay.
Should we play the game with Tommy?
I'm going fifth, but I'm going to take the prop bet that will we see Roman breakdance on the games floor at some point? And
I hope so.
I'm hammering that yes.
Yes.
Especially if he wins, like comeback he wins some like superlative title, or he wins a few events and he gets to walk away with some trophies.
Yeah, that'd be amazing to see him do a little head spin action on the Coliseum floor.
And
that would be amazing.
We've seen that personality behind the scenes a little bit, and Snorri's talked about his manager, how the language barrier really mutes someone's personality time to time. And when he's back at home and he's at his affiliate, he's like the life of the party kind of guy. He's goofing, he's laughing. You see bits of that on his social media as well. And I don't like talking about like the whole team of destiny, athletes of destiny, but like they announced earlier this year that him and his wife are expecting too. And I mean, it seems like there's a lot of things kind of flowing in his favor. Like he's going to be a father. He's got his visa to the United States. Like,
I don't think it's a small thing that he spent a couple of weeks training with Laura Horvath either.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I mean, it's time to pull out the old battle axe and start swinging.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't he a mayhem athlete?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. That's something I felt like, I don't know. I felt like he might be. If he is, I mean, now to see him training,
I think he's been getting. I think he's been. I know he followed Brute for a long time. I'm not sure if he's left them as their main programmer, but I think he has also done a lot of the aerobic capacity training over the years.
Yeah,
he still has Brute strength listed on his Instagram profile as well as aerobic capacity. So,
so seeing him come in, there's a possibility you might see him training with Rich Froning or some of that Brute strength people, and just before the games. And I mean that's exciting by itself. Just the prospect of him training with those groups, either whether it be with Hinshaw or with the Brute strength people prior to the games.
Yeah, and this is what people need to realize. Like suddenly this news is announced and everyone wants to talk about it because he's actually relevant in the main competition season now. But obviously we're throwing around names like Brute and aerobic capacity and Chris Hinshaw. Like these are the caliber of training environments that he's been putting himself in. And to the points that Tommy and Patrick have talked about, the fact that he hasn't been able to make it for 4 years running has not discouraged him from trying to improve himself as an athlete and a competitor in this space. And, as it stands right now, it looks like everyone who's been wanting to see this is finally going to get that chance this year. And they can hopefully starting now, really learn about the fact that Roman's been setting himself up for success for years. And this is a really exciting time for everyone who's close to him.
And he's still
what
26,
is the bottom
27
line?
Too. Sorry to cut you off. He's still 26.
No,
27.
that's okay. Yeah.
So we're looking at like male athletic prime as far as like the training years and his time. He's been able to basically showcase his ability to be at the top of the sport without going through those like wars of attrition that the games can be sometimes year after year. And he's showing up to other competitions as well to kind of keep that edge sharp. And, we could see the best version of him now as he's kind of settled into his own and refined his game over the years as well.
So what do you each think is the bottom line that Roman finally has a U.S. visa?
I think the bottom line for me is watch out men's field. I mean, wow. I mean, we had a great race last year with Medeiros and Vellner, and it's still wide open. I mean, for so many years, it was dominated by Matt Frazier, and before that, Rich Froning. Now we have some parity, and now you throw in someone like Roman in there. Ooh, it's going to be fun. There's 5 potential athletes, maybe more right now. I think most of us agree probably on 5 that are really going to push for podium spots, and maybe topple Justin as the king of the castle.
I would say that the bottom line here is the 2022 men's field is as exciting of a field as we've ever had. And it's, even if you look at guys like Alexander Caron and Sam Cornway, who are able to podium at Wadapalooza, Lazar Jukic is breaking through. Jeff Adler strung together a lot of good performances. Ricky's back. Now Roman in the mix. Vellner and Medeiros and Fikowski and BKG are still relevant. Jonakowski is going to be rehabbing from injury, but if he's healthy, Yeah, you have the up and comers like Guy Saxon's still young. His brother just beat him at Wadapalooza. Will he make the games and make a run? And the list just goes on. I mean, we haven't even mentioned guys like Travis Mayer, Noah Olson, Alex Vigneault, who are right there. Cole Sager every year. It's a really, really exciting year for the men.
I'm going to quote personal inspiration of mine, Samuel L. Jackson in the cinematic classic Jurassic Park. Hold on to your butts, because if that piggybacks off of Brian's kind of statement, but if there were already clues as to the scope internationally of CrossFit as a competition, I think this is only going to expand it. 7 of the 10 men in the top 10 last year were from outside of the United States, and I think Roman is a certifiable like top 10 contender, maybe even and possibly top 5 in my opinion, with a potential sniff at the podium. And that's going to be, the first time that in this new situation, or in anyone really, that we have an actual contender from Asia stepping up to kind of lay claim to a spot in the top 10. And I think that's only going to benefit the sport globally as a whole. So I think this is a possible landmark international year.
And I'm just thankful that Tommy quoted Samuel L. Jackson from a different movie besides Snakes on a Plane.
Thank God for that. All right, guys, Brian Friend, Patrick Clark, Tommy Marquez, thank you all for joining us. It's an exciting topic. The men's field is going to be awesome to watch this year, and we will see you guys next time.